Have you ever wondered what happens when the most powerful woman in the city whispers something so dangerous, so forbidden, that it could destroy everything you've built? Stay with me, because what happens next will leave you breathless, and I promise you, you won't see the ending coming. Victoria Ashford stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse office, her long silky white hair cascading down her back like liquid moonlight. She was watching the city lights flicker below, each one representing someone fighting their own battle, nursing their own heartbreak. But tonight, her battle was different. Tonight, she was fighting herself. Behind her, the elevator doors opened, and Daniel Rivera stepped out, his aesthetic build silhouetted against the soft golden light of the lobby. He carried a tablet in one hand and a small paper bag in the other, and despite the late hour, despite the exhaustion that had settled into his bones after another 18-hour day, there was something magnetic about the way he moved. Confident, but not arrogant. Careful, but not afraid. "You summoned me at 11 o'clock at night," Daniel said, his voice carrying that trademark wit that had become both his shield and his sword over the past 2 years working for her. "I'm hoping this is about the Henderson merger and not because you finally decided to fire me for that comment I made about your taste in art." Victoria didn't turn around. She couldn't. Because if she looked at him right now, with his fair skin illuminated by the city glow and those eyes that always seemed to see right through her carefully constructed walls, she might do something she couldn't take back. "I brought you dinner," he continued, setting the bag on her desk. "Thai food. From that place you pretend you don't love because it's not fancy enough for a billionaire." "I never said that. You didn't have to. I've spent 2 years learning to read between your lines, Victoria." She finally turned, and the sight of him nearly undid her. He was wearing a simple white button-down, sleeves rolled up to his forearms, and dark slacks that hugged him in all the right places. But it wasn't his appearance that caught her breath. It was the way he was looking at her, like she was just a woman, not a fortune, not a corporation, not a name that appeared in Forbes every quarter. "Daniel, we need to talk." Those 4 words had ended countless relationships, ruined friendships, and destroyed partnerships. But the way she said them, with a tremor in her voice that she couldn't quite control, made Daniel set down his tablet and give her his full attention. "That sounds serious. Should I be worried? Did I finally cross a line with my impeccable humor? This isn't a joke." "I know." His expression softened. "I know it's not. Talk to me." Victoria walked toward her desk, her perfect figure moving with the grace of someone who had been trained since childhood to command attention. She poured herself a glass of water, then poured one for him, a gesture so intimate in its normalcy that it made Daniel's heart clench. "The board meeting tomorrow," she began. "They're going to try to remove me as CEO." Daniel's jaw tightened. "On what grounds?" "They don't need grounds. They need votes. And Edward Thornton has been buying them for months." Edward Thornton. The name hung in the air like poison. He was Victoria's former business partner, a man who had once promised her the world and then tried to burn it down when she refused to be his puppet. He had spent the last 3 years building alliances, whispering lies, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And apparently, that moment was tomorrow. "Then we fight," Daniel said simply. "We pull the proxy statements, we call in favors, we do whatever it takes." It's not that simple. It never is with you. But that's never stopped us before. Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in their professional relationship, she let him see the fear behind her armor. "Edward has something on me. Something personal. Something that could destroy not just my company, but my reputation, my legacy, everything I've built since I was 22 years old and stupid enough to trust the wrong person." Daniel moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and warm that had become inexplicably comforting over the years. "Tell me." "I can't." "You can. You're the most powerful woman I've ever met, Victoria. You've built an empire from nothing. You've survived things that would have broken anyone else. Whatever this is, we'll handle it together. Together. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't even know what you're signing up for. I signed up for this the day I answered your impossible interview questions and you hired me anyway. I signed up for this every time you called me at midnight with some crisis or another. I signed up for this when I chose to stay, even when headhunters offered me triple the salary to leave. Victoria's eyes glistened. Why did you stay? I've never understood that. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said something that changed everything, because leaving you was never an option. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria felt her heart racing in her chest, felt years of professionalism and carefully maintained boundaries beginning to crumble like sandcastles against a rising tide. Daniel, there's something I need to tell you. But if I stay tonight, if we have this conversation now. She stepped closer, close enough that their bodies were almost touching. I don't trust myself. I won't be gentle. His breath caught. What are you saying? Before she could answer, her phone rang. The sharp sound cut through the tension like a knife, and Victoria grabbed it with trembling hands. Miss Ashford. It was her attorney's voice, tight with urgency. We have a problem. Edward just leaked something to the press. It's going to break in an hour. You need to see this. But what Edward leaked wasn't what anyone expected. And the revelation about to unfold will shake Victoria to her very core. If you're invested in this story, go ahead and hit that like button right now, because trust me, you're going to want to be part of what happens next. Victoria's face went pale as she listened to her attorney explain what was happening. Daniel watched her expression shift from confusion to horror to something he could only describe as devastation. When she ended the call, her hand was shaking so badly that she almost dropped the phone. Victoria, talk to me. What is it? She handed him her phone, where a draft article was already circulating among media insiders. The headline hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. Ashford empire built on stolen inheritance, billionaire accused of defrauding her own father's estate. Daniel read the article quickly, his legal mind already processing the implications. According to the piece, Victoria had allegedly manipulated her elderly father's will, cutting out other family members and claiming the entire Ashford fortune for herself. The source? Her estranged younger sister, Catherine, who had apparently been feeding information to Edward Thornton for months. This is a lie, Daniel said immediately. I've seen the probate documents. Everything was legitimate. Of course it's a lie. But lies don't need to be true to destroy you. They just need to be believed. Then we prove them wrong. We get the documents, we hold a press conference, You don't understand. Victoria's voice broke. Catherine isn't doing this because she believes I cheated her. She's doing this because I did something to her that she can never forgive. And Edward knows exactly what that is. Daniel set down the phone and took her hands in his. They were cold, trembling, and so different from the confident grip that signed billion-dollar contracts and commanded boardrooms. Tell me. Tell me everything. So she did. 20 years ago, Victoria and Catherine had been close. Not just sisters, but best friends. They had shared secrets and dreams and promises that they would always protect each other. But then Victoria had fallen in love with a man named Christopher, a charming entrepreneur who had swept her off her feet with promises of forever. What Victoria didn't know was that Christopher had been seeing Catherine first. He had pursued Victoria not because he loved her, but because she was the one their father favored, the one set to inherit the company. When Victoria discovered the truth, she was devastated. But instead of confronting Christopher directly, she had done something unforgivable. She had exposed Catherine's involvement in a failed business venture that Christopher had orchestrated, a venture that had lost millions of their father's money. Catherine was blamed for the losses, was cut out of the family business, and spent years rebuilding her reputation and her life. The truth was that Christopher had been the mastermind, and Victoria had known it. But in her heartbreak and rage, she had let her sister take the fall to punish her for the betrayal. "I was young and stupid and hurt," Victoria whispered. "And by the time I realized what I had done, it was too late." Catherine was gone. She changed her name, moved across the country, and refused all contact. "I've tried to reach her for years, but she won't speak to me." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, processing the weight of what she had shared. This wasn't just a business problem. This was a family tragedy, a wound that had been festering for 2 decades. And Edward knows all of this. He knows everything. He and Catherine reconnected a few years ago. He's been using her pain to get to me. So this isn't really about the inheritance. No. It's about revenge. Catherine wants me to feel what she felt. And Edward wants my company. Daniel stood and walked to the window, looking out at the same city lights that Victoria had been watching earlier. His mind was racing, trying to find a path through this maze of betrayal and pain. "There's only one way to beat this," he finally said. "What?" "The truth. Not the partial truth, not the sanitized version, but all of it. You go public before Edward can control the narrative. You admit what you did to Catherine, you apologize, and you show the world that you've changed." Victoria laughed bitterly. "You're asking me to destroy myself. I'm asking you to save yourself. There's a difference." He turned to face her. "The woman you were 20 years ago made a terrible mistake. But the woman I've watched for the past 2 years? She's not that person anymore. She donates millions to charity. She mentors young women in business. She treats her employees with respect and dignity. That's who you are now. Let the world see her. And if they don't forgive me, then at least you'll be free. Free from Edward's manipulation, free from Catherine's ghost, free from the weight of a secret that's been crushing you for years." Victoria stared at him, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. This man, this single father who had been by her side through countless crises, who had sacrificed his own time and sleep and personal life to help her succeed, was offering her something no one else ever had. Unconditional support. And maybe something more. "Why do you care so much about what happens to me?" she asked, her voice raw. Daniel crossed the room in 3 strides and stood directly in front of her. "Because I see you, Victoria. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the ice queen that the tabloids love to write about. I see the woman who sends anonymous gifts to her employees when they're struggling. I see the woman who stayed late to mentor my daughter when she was doing a school project on women in business. I see the woman who cries during sappy movies when she thinks no one is watching. You saw that? I see everything." He reached up and gently brushed a strand of that silky white hair from her face. "I've been seeing you for 2 years. And I've been falling for you for almost as long." The confession hung in the air between them, fragile and powerful and terrifying. Victoria felt tears sliding down her cheeks, tears she had been holding back for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to release them. "Daniel, I'm a mess. My life is falling apart. My sister hates me, my company is about to be taken from me, and I've spent the last 20 years building walls so high that I forgot there was anyone inside them. Then let me help you tear them down. You have a daughter. A life. I can't ask you to get involved in my disaster. You're not asking. I'm choosing. That's what you do when you love someone." The word love sent shockwaves through her entire body. She had been called many things in her life, desired, pursued, envied, admired, but loved? Truly, deeply, unconditionally loved? That was something she had stopped believing in long ago. "You can't love me," she whispered. "You don't even know the worst parts of me." "I just heard the worst part. And I'm still here." Victoria broke. All the years of control, all the carefully constructed armor, all the pretending that she didn't need anyone, it all shattered in that moment. She fell into his arms, sobbing against his chest, and Daniel held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. He held her while she cried for her lost sister, for her broken past, for all the years she had spent alone because she was too afraid to let anyone close. And when she finally pulled back, her face tear-streaked and her makeup ruined, he looked at her like she was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "Stay with me tonight," she whispered. "Not like that, not yet. Just, stay. I don't want to be alone." I wasn't planning on going anywhere. They moved to the couch in her office, the leather soft and worn from countless late nights. Victoria curled against his side, feeling his heartbeat steady against her ear, and for the first time in years, she felt safe. "Tell me about your daughter," she said. "Tell me about the parts of your life I've missed because I was too busy being your boss." Daniel smiled, and the love in his eyes when he talked about his child made Victoria's heart ache in the best possible way. "Her name is Maya. She's 12, going on 30. She's brilliant and stubborn and she has opinions about everything. Her mother left when she was 3, said she wasn't cut out for motherhood, and I've been raising her alone ever since. That must have been so hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But also the best. She's the reason I wake up every morning, the reason I work so hard, the reason I believe in second chances." Victoria looked up at him. "Does she know about me?" "She knows you're my boss. She knows I work late because I'm helping someone important. And..." He hesitated. "She knows that I talk about you a lot. She actually told me last week that I should just marry you already and save everyone the suspense." Victoria laughed, a genuine laugh that surprised them both. "She sounds like quite the matchmaker. She's insufferable. You'd love her. I'd like to meet her. Properly, I mean. Not as your boss, but as, whatever this is. I'd like that too." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of the night's revelations settling around them like a heavy blanket. Outside, the city continued its relentless motion, unaware that inside this penthouse office, 2 people were quietly falling into something neither of them had expected. "The board meeting is at 9, Victoria finally said. "We should try to get some sleep." "Probably. But first, I need to tell you something." She looked up at him, fear flickering in her eyes. "What?" "Edward Thornton made me an offer 6 months ago. He wanted me to spy on you, to feed him information about your vulnerabilities, your secrets, anything he could use against you." Victoria went still. "What?" "He offered me $5 million. He said he could make all my problems disappear, set up Maya for life, and ensure I never had to work again." The betrayal she expected to feel didn't come. Instead, there was only a quiet question: "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I turned him down. I didn't even have to think about it. And I need you to know that before tomorrow, before everything gets complicated, before you start doubting who you can trust." "You turned down $5 million? I turned down a lot more than that. I turned down the chance to destroy you." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Because you're worth more than any amount of money. You're worth protecting. If this moment is making your heart race, drop a comment below and tell me what you think Victoria should do. Should she trust Daniel completely, or should she be careful? And make sure you're subscribed because what happens at tomorrow's board meeting is going to change everything." Victoria didn't sleep that night. She lay on the couch with Daniel's arm around her, watching the sky slowly lighten from black to gray to the soft pink of dawn. Her mind was racing, planning, preparing for the battle ahead. At 7 o'clock, she finally sat up, careful not to wake Daniel, who had drifted off somewhere around 3 in the morning. She looked at him sleeping, his face relaxed and peaceful, and felt a surge of tenderness so powerful it nearly overwhelmed her. This man had chosen her. Despite the chaos, despite the secrets, despite every reason he had to walk away, he had stayed. She wasn't going to let Edward Thornton take that from her. By 8:30, Victoria had showered, changed into a power suit the color of midnight, and prepared her statement. Daniel stood beside her in the elevator, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of her thoughts. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. "No. But I'm going to do it anyway. That's my girl." The boardroom was packed when they arrived. 12 board members sat around the gleaming table, their faces ranging from sympathetic to hostile. At the far end, Edward Thornton sat with a smug smile that made Victoria want to throw something at his perfectly groomed head. And beside him, looking smaller than Victoria remembered, was Catherine. Her sister had aged in the 20 years since they'd last seen each other. There were lines around her eyes, gray in her hair, and a hardness in her expression that Victoria knew she had put there. But underneath all of that, Victoria could still see the girl she had grown up with, the girl who had braided her hair and shared her dreams and trusted her completely. "Catherine," Victoria said, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "I'm glad you're here. I'm not here for a reunion, Victoria. I'm here to watch you finally get what you deserve." The word stung, but Victoria nodded. "I understand. And before we begin the official meeting, there's something I need to say. To everyone, but especially to you." She stood at the head of the table, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. This was the moment that would define everything. This was where she would either save herself or destroy everything she had built. 20 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I was hurt and angry, and instead of confronting the person who had betrayed me, I took my pain out on someone who didn't deserve it. I let my sister take the blame for something that wasn't her fault. I destroyed her reputation, her relationship with our father, and her trust in family. And I have spent every day since then trying to outrun the guilt. The room was silent. Even Edward looked surprised by the admission. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I'm done hiding. I'm done letting fear and shame control my life. And I'm done letting other people use my past mistakes to manipulate me." She looked directly at Edward. "You think you know all my secrets. You think you have leverage. But here's what you don't understand, the power of a secret lies in its concealment. The moment it's spoken out loud, it becomes just another part of the story. And my story isn't over yet." Catherine's expression had shifted during Victoria's speech. The hardness was still there, but underneath it, something else was emerging. Something that looked almost like recognition. "Victoria," she said quietly. "I waited 20 years to hear you admit what you did. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it the moment I realized how wrong I was. But I was afraid. Afraid of losing what I had built, afraid of what people would think, afraid of facing the person I used to be. I'm not afraid anymore. And what exactly do you expect me to do with this apology? Nothing. That's not why I'm giving it. I'm giving it because you deserve to hear it. What you do with it is your choice." The board members were murmuring among themselves, clearly uncertain about what was happening. This wasn't the dramatic takedown Edward had promised. This was something far more complex, more human, more real. Edward stood, his face red with frustration. "This is exactly the manipulation I warned you about. She's trying to play the victim, to distract from the real issues." "The real issues?" Victoria turned to face him fully. "You mean like how you've been systematically buying board members' votes through shell companies? Or how you've been feeding false information to financial journalists? Or how you offered my assistant $5 million to spy on me?" The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Edward's face went pale. "That's a lie. I have the recordings." Victoria pulled out a small recorder from her pocket. "Every conversation. Every offer. Every illegal scheme you've cooked up over the past 3 years. I've been building this case for months, waiting for the right moment. And you handed it to me by coming here today. Daniel stepped forward, a folder in his hands. The evidence has already been submitted to the SEC and the FBI. You can lawyer up all you want, Edward, but this is over. The vote that followed was almost anticlimactic. One by one, the board members who had been loyal to Edward switched their votes. Some out of self-preservation, others because they were genuinely horrified by what he had done. By the end, it was unanimous. Victoria Ashford remained CEO of her company. And Edward Thornton was escorted out by security, facing a future filled with investigations and legal battles. But Victoria wasn't celebrating. She was looking at her sister, who had remained silent through the entire proceeding, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. "Catherine," Victoria said softly. "Can we talk? Just the two of us?" For a long moment, Catherine didn't respond. And then, slowly, she nodded. They walked out onto the building's rooftop garden, a green oasis in the middle of the concrete jungle. The morning sun was warm on their faces, and for a moment, they just stood there, two sisters who had lost 20 years to pain and pride. "I didn't know what Edward was really doing," Catherine finally said. "He told me he was just trying to hold you accountable. He made it sound like justice. He was using your pain to get what he wanted. That's what people like him do. And people like you?" Victoria took a deep breath. "People like me make terrible mistakes and spend the rest of their lives trying to make up for them. I can't undo what I did, Catherine. But I can try to be better. I can try to be the sister you deserved all along." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "I was so angry for so long. I built my whole life around that anger. And now I don't know what to do with it." "You don't have to do anything with it right now. We have time. That's the thing about tomorrow, it always comes. And maybe, eventually, we can find our way back to each other." Catherine looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in 20 years, Victoria saw a glimmer of the girl she used to know. "I'm not ready to forgive you," Catherine said. "But I'm willing to try." "That's enough. That's more than enough." They stood there in the morning light, two broken halves of a family beginning the long, slow process of healing. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but it was a start. When Victoria finally returned to her office, Daniel was waiting. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, and he looked as exhausted as she felt. But he was smiling. "You were incredible in there," he said. "I had good backup. I meant what I said last night. All of it." Victoria walked toward him, closing the distance that had always seemed so vast and now felt like nothing at all. "I know you did. And I've been thinking about what you said. About second chances and tearing down walls. And I think." She stopped directly in front of him, close enough to feel his warmth. "I think I'm ready to try. With you. With everything. I'm tired of being afraid." Daniel reached out and cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle and reverent. "I've been waiting 2 years to hear you say that. Then I'm sorry I made you wait so long. Don't be. You were worth it." When he kissed her, it was soft and sweet and full of promise. All the tension, all the longing, all the feelings they had been suppressing for years, it all flowed into that moment, that connection, that beginning. And somewhere in the city below, in a modest apartment decorated with children's artwork and family photos, a 12-year-old girl named Maya was getting ready for school, completely unaware that her father's life was about to change in the most beautiful way possible. 3 months later, Victoria stood in the living room of Daniel's apartment, nervously clutching a gift bag while Maya examined her with the critical eye of a preteen who had been anticipating this meeting for weeks. "So," Maya said, crossing her arms. "You're the boss lady my dad won't shut up about." "Maya," Daniel warned. "What?" "It's true." Victoria laughed. "Yes, I suppose I am. Though I prefer to think of myself as his partner now. In all things. Maya's expression softened slightly. He seems really happy. He sings in the shower now. It's weird. I'm standing right here, Daniel protested. I know. That's what makes it funny. Victoria knelt down to Maya's level. I brought you something. Your dad mentioned you're interested in science. She handed over the gift bag, and Maya's eyes widened as she pulled out a junior microscope set, complete with prepared slides and a beginner's guide to microbiology. This is amazing. Maya looked up at Victoria with new appreciation. Most adults just get me clothes or jewelry. Well, I was never a normal adult. And from what I hear, neither are you. Maya grinned, and in that moment, Victoria knew that everything was going to be okay. Not easy, not simple, but okay. She had a family again. A complicated, unconventional, perfectly imperfect family. That night, after Maya had gone to bed, Victoria and Daniel sat on the balcony of his apartment, looking out at the city lights. Thank you, Victoria said quietly. For what? For not giving up on me. For seeing through all my walls. For giving me a reason to be better. Daniel pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. You already were better. You just needed someone to remind you. She thought about Catherine, who she had had lunch with the previous week. It had been awkward and tentative and filled with long silences. But it had also been real. And they had agreed to do it again. She thought about her company, which was thriving in the wake of Edward's downfall. The scandal had actually improved their reputation, as investors and customers alike had been impressed by her willingness to be transparent and accountable. She thought about Maya, already planning science projects they could work on together, already feeling like a daughter in some strange and wonderful way. And she thought about Daniel, the man who had shown her that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, day after day, and choosing each other despite the fear. I love you, she said, the words still unfamiliar on her tongue but getting easier every time she spoke them. I love you too. He smiled that crooked smile that had become her favorite thing in the world. Even if you are completely hopeless at cooking. I'm a billionaire. I don't need to cook. And yet you tried to make me breakfast yesterday and almost burned down my kitchen. It was one small fire. The smoke alarm went off 3 times. Victoria laughed, the sound free and unguarded in a way it never used to be. Fine. Next time, you're cooking. Deal. But only if you promise to actually eat what I make instead of just pushing it around your plate. I do not do that. You absolutely do. I've watched you do it for 2 years. She looked at him with mock indignation. You're insufferable. That's why you love me. And it was true. She loved him for all of it, the humor that deflected pain, the strength that never wavered, the heart that had chosen her when she couldn't choose herself. She loved him for seeing her at her worst and believing she could be better. She loved him for being a wonderful father, a loyal friend, and the partner she never knew she needed. Most of all, she loved him for staying that night when everything fell apart, for holding her in the dark, and for showing her that she didn't have to be gentle with her love. She just had to be real. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in the power of second chances and the courage it takes to be vulnerable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world and helps us create more stories that celebrate the beautiful complexity of love and redemption. Just one click makes all the difference. The story of Victoria and Daniel doesn't end here. It continues in quiet mornings and late nights, in family dinners and business meetings, in all the small moments that make up a life shared. It continues in Catherine's slow journey toward forgiveness and Maya's growing presence in Victoria's heart. It continues in the way Victoria has learned to laugh again, to trust again, to believe that she deserves happiness despite her imperfect past. Because that's the truth that this story is really about. We are not defined by our worst moments. We are defined by what we do after them. By the courage to face our mistakes. By the strength to make amends. By the willingness to let love in, even when we're terrified of what it might cost. Victoria Ashford learned that lesson the hard way. But she learned it. And now, standing on that balcony with the man she loves, looking out at a city full of people fighting their own battles, she knows something with absolute certainty. It was all worth it. Every tear, every fear, every wall she had to tear down. Worth it for this moment. Worth it for this love. Worth it for this life she never thought she could have. So if you're out there right now, watching this story and wondering if it's too late for you, if you're too broken, too far gone, too scared to try again, let Victoria and Daniel's story be your reminder. It's never too late. You're never too broken. And love, real love, is worth every risk. Now, tell me in the comments below, where in the world are you watching from? I love knowing that this story is reaching hearts across the globe, connecting us through the universal language of love and hope. Drop your country in the comments, and let's see how far this message can travel. And remember, the best love stories aren't about perfect people. They're about imperfect people who choose each other anyway, day after day, moment after moment, for the rest of their lives. That's the kind of love worth fighting for. That's the kind of love worth waiting for. And that's the kind of love that Victoria finally found in the most unexpected place, in the arms of a single dad who saw through her walls and refused to let her hide. Be gentle with yourself. Be brave with your heart. And never, ever stop believing that your story can have a beautiful ending too.